to the Jonathan Kinloch Show. Today on the Jonathan Kinloch Show, we have State Representative John Olumba. We're going to talk to him about his request for an investigation into the City of Detroit Health Department, as well as his recall attempt of Detroit Mayor Dave Bing. So when we come back, we'll have that discussion with State Representative John Olumba. Welcome back to the Jonathan Kinloch Show. Recently, State Representative John Olumba sent a letter to the State Attorney General calling for his office to investigate the Bing administration as it relates to a $50,000 transaction that occurred in the city's health department. I want to welcome you to the show, Representative Olumba. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well, and thank you for this opportunity.
Well, you sent a letter to the Attorney General requesting for his office to take a look at a $50,000 transaction that occurred in the city's health department. The city of Detroit has received the money back from the private entity. So where's the concern, and why do you feel that there's a need to conduct this investigation at this time?
Right. Well, you know, the concern is in how monies are being handled in general. I don't think this isn't at home with your family where somebody says, well, my $10 came up missing, and then, you know, Uncle Albert comes and say, oh, yeah, is this it? And pulls the $10 out and give it back. No harm, no foul. This is city government. And there's a particular way in which money is supposed to be handled so that the taxpayer, so that the city council can be able to track the money and give some accountability, some transparency back to the people. Okay, and in this instance, you're talking about a major city department, the Department of Health, okay, that Bing is saying he wants to transfer this department into a nonprofit, that a nonprofit is going to start handling what is traditionally government business. The name of this nonprofit is the Institute for Population Health. However, the mayor has not been transparent about how this nonprofit was set up. He hasn't been transparent about how the nonprofit is going to plan on doing business. Now, I received correspondence, emails, information, if you will, from a whistleblower type of perspective that detailed how money was being handled in the Department of Health. In this particular situation, we're talking about $50,000. Now, every day when you go into the Department of Health, you go in there, you say, at Herman Kiefer, you say, well, I would like to get 2 birth certificates. A lot of people in Detroit are familiar with going to Herman Kiefer to get a birth certificate. They say, well, it's $11. Some people write a check for $11. Other people would just give them a $10 bill and a $1 bill. What they were doing at the Department of Health was they were taking the checks, and the checks they were collecting and segregating the checks, and they were depositing the checks where they're supposed to go, into the city bank account, into the city treasury. That's proper. That's how we can keep track of the money. That's how we can keep track of the budget, and the city knows how much money it's taking in, how much money it's spending. The cash, which is very difficult to track cash, the cash, instead of going with the checks like they were supposed to, they started to segregate the cash into a stash box and into a safe inside the building. Now, there's a city rule that says that all revenues collected in these departments have to be deposited within 48 hours. There's a reason for that. But instead, they intentionally took the cash and put it to the side. And they held the cash in a place that was really unsafe, as it is detailed in the correspondence, in a safe that the combination hasn't been changed for more than 20 years. When you look at the situation, the $50,000 that they ended up depositing into another bank account, not the city's bank account, into a private bank account, that $50,000 that they segregated, it could be possible that someone took money from that. The other thing is, the citizens of Detroit have no idea what's happening with this private bank account. Once that $50,000 was put in, it's supposed to be spent on city things. It's highly possible that that money could be spent on other things. And so what I'm saying is, let's investigate that. I think there's enough enough questions in the room that need to be answered to where you can say, let's investigate this to make sure that this money was properly handled.
Okay, let's say this. We all understand basic civics. You have the state government, you have local government, In our local government, we have 9 members of the Detroit City Council. Hell, we also have a 9-member financial advisory board. So we have another layer of government. And with CFO, and then we have a CFO and a project manager. So that represents, and the mayor of the city of Detroit, that represents the city of Detroit's government.
That's correct.
Why do you feel a need as a state representative to insert yourself into this issue? You have the Detroit City Council, who has the legislative powers and the ability to subpoena, as well as to conduct an investigation, as well as to subpoena if city officials are not cooperating with them, and they also have certain new provisions under the city charter.
You're absolutely correct in that regard. I would remind you and the listening audience that this isn't a new issue. It's not something that I hopped on without thinking about it. It's not something that I hopped on that I got into just haphazardly. First of all, I was asked by my constituency. Members of my constituency, they asked me, they said, we think that something is going on wrong here, and we believe that you're the sort of guy that will speak to it. Now, I'm a representative. I'm not an executive. I'm a representative. And what that means is I work on behalf of the people. And when my people ask me to do something, and when a number of my people ask me to do something, I'm obligated, if I want to keep my job, to do it. I take that part very seriously. Now, the city council does have the subpoena powers, as you mentioned, and they've used them. Also, this information had been forwarded, as is my understanding, that it had been forwarded to the Wayne County prosecutor as well, okay? But I talked to members of the city council that said that they've been asking this mayor for transparency on this Institute for Population Health since way back in the summer, since as early as June. The mayor is supposed to issue what's called an EOP. Now, I'm not sure of the exact words what EOP stands for, but essentially, this is the way it was described to me. The mayor, whenever he wants to do something like this, whenever he wants to start moving money around, he can't just do it unilaterally. Either he's going to issue an executive order, or he's going to do so through the EOP process. That's what gives the council the ability to scrutinize, to be able to understand what's going on. They continue to ask this mayor, is there something going on with this we need to know about? Will you please forward us the information? And this mayor, on one hand, refused to give them the information. On the other hand, behind the scenes, he was steady giving orders to be able to move this money. So his office was, on one hand, saying, we're not going to give this information to city council. But he was still dealing with that department and saying, you can move this money here, you can move that money there. To me, I've got to ask the question, well, if you knew you were dealing with this department on a day-to-day basis, and people within your administration, your cabinet, was giving orders to this department to move the money, and the council was asking you about it, why wouldn't you be forthwith? Why wouldn't you be transparent and tell them, well, here's what we're doing?
Well, we're going to continue this discussion on the other side of the break. This is State Representative John Olumba, and we're discussing the request for an investigation by the Attorney General of the Bing administration. And when we come back, we're going to talk about this recall filing as well. We'll be right back on the other side of this break. Welcome back to the Jonathan Kinloch Show. Representative Olumba, before we get into the next trigger or the next part of your request that you announced a few weeks ago, let's talk about the fact that, let's continue the discussion as it relates to the fact that the Wayne County prosecutor had been asked to take a look at this. Right. And Kim Worthy is, she's not shy about conducting investigations and to public officials, especially, as we know, public officials within the city of Detroit. So, I mean, you have the local county prosecutor who has it on her desk taking a look at this. Why do you feel that it was necessary, once again, to ask the state attorney general at this particular point to intervene in this issue? Okay,
so this isn't the first time that I've been in a situation like this. Many may remember that I was the one who first asked for the investigation into the county executive, Robert Ficano. And in that particular situation, the county prosecutor, she recused herself. She said, well, this is this represents perhaps a conflict of interest. And so I'm not going to investigate this if another...
But you could understand why. The
Right.
county executive is the chief executive for the county that she's the prosecutor for.
Right. I think that was justified, and I think it was proper. I think she did the right thing in that particular instance. But understanding from my perspective as a representative, I have an interest in time as well. Okay, and so when I ask for an investigation, or if I know that an investigation has been asked for, okay, and I'm looking at the city and the situation we're in, it's not me, but it's the newspapers. It's also the Mayor Dave Beam. It's also the City Council that they're of the opinion that the city is headed toward an iceberg, if you will. They're of the opinion that the city is headed toward a bankruptcy. I've read in the papers, and I understand that the city has sent back more than maybe $40 million in federal funds over the past year. $11 million was just sent back by the mayor's office. When I look at the time issue in terms of what this mayor is doing to this city, there's an interest in time as well. And so when you ask for an investigation from the Wayne County prosecutor, as I understand it, I think the city council or another body asks for an investigation by the auditor or investigator general for the city, inspector general for the city. There's only a matter of time that I'm willing to wait as this mayor continues to push an agenda or continues to siphon off funds.
Let me ask you that this consent agreement that the city of Detroit entered into grants the mayor, grants the financial advisory board broad power over the city's finances.
Correct.
Is it the opinion of the Bing administration that this consent agreement, which was agreed to by the Detroit City Council, or at least a majority of them, granted him the authority to move this money around without either informing them or requiring an action by them?
He may have that opinion, but I think it shows that it was clear that there was some misfeasance when the money was moved, and then when the whistleblower, you got to remember, it wasn't a politician that brought this about. A whistleblower came forward and said, somebody took money and moved it. And if he was of the opinion that he was within his rights in order to do so, then he would have responded and said, I'm within my rights to be able to move this money into a private bank account. But instead, what they did was take the money and put it back. And so if he was of the opinion that he was within his rights to begin with, then the question is, then why would you move it back? And so to me, it's not that I'm casting aspersions or saying that the man is guilty. But what I'm saying is there are enough questions out there, even in this instance where they moved the money back. I think any normal person would say, well, if you thought that you could do this, then why'd you move it back? Those are enough questions, I think, to lay the framework to ask for an investigation. And again, this is all in the interest of time. I think there's a show out. I don't watch a lot of TV, but there's a show out called, I think, First 48 or First 24. And what they're saying is when a crime is committed, when you think that there may have been a crime that committed, you ought to try to solve it within the first 24 to 48 hours. Because after that, evidence gets changed, things move around. So even in that pragmatic instance, we understand that when there are things that need investigating, they need to happen in a timely fashion. So you can't sometimes wait for the county prosecutor or the politics to occur, for the mayor to put his statement out, for the attorney general to say what they've got to say. Sometimes you have to move forward as quickly as possible.
Let me ask you this, because since your announcement, you have a lot of folks who've called in support of your initiative. But then you also have some folks who also say, look, who is this guy? What makes him to be the town crier? You have him who basically focused in on the county executive and those issues there, and then you have him now focusing in on the city of Detroit. What makes you to be the town crier, and how do you respond to that? Where there's some folks who are saying, look, why are you keep jumping on these particular issues?
The simple answer is I'm acting on my faith, and I'm just doing my job. As a representative, I do what the people ask me to do. In this city and in the county, in the state, sometimes the people are crying out. They want particular things. And they're saying to government, well, don't do this to us, or we need you to do this. And it seems in this day and age, people get elected and they start saying, I'm going to do what I want to do. And so when people were crying out for the governor to say, don't tax our pensions, he said, I'm going to do what I want to do. When people say, we want this to happen, it seems like officials ignore that. That's not me. When people came to me, they say, we want an investigation of this or that, I move because that's what I am. I'm a representative. Now, I've asked for investigations, but you should also know I take my job seriously. I'm a legislator, and so I make laws. Now, in the past session, I'm not just going around being the town crier asking for investigations. I've introduced more than 40 bills. It's a part of a 60-bill package. I'm one of the only Democrats to get a bill passed in this session with my name on it. I've got 2 other bills that were passed without my name on it that I got moved through someone else. And so I'm doing my job. As a legislator, I've passed as much as as many bills as any Democrat. But also as a representative of the people, I have to respond when my people are asking me for something. Now, I just came off of a re-election attempt, and I won. I won not just by a slim victory, I won by 1,500 votes, and I won by more than 50%. That means that the people that I represent are happy with what I've been doing. And you know why? It's because I'm knocking over 10,000 doors. I'm keyed in on what the people want. So there are some people that are saying, who is he? Who is he? But I stand firm on the ground of the people that I represent, the 10,000 doors that I knocked, they were all asking me, when are you going to do something about the mayor and what's going on downtown?
When we come back, we're going to talk about the next part of your letter, or more so your announcement, and that is the recall of Mayor Dave Bing. I understand you filed a petition to recall the mayor with the Wayne County Election Commission, and when we come back, we're going to talk about this recall attempt. Welcome back to the Jonathan Kinloch Show. Representative Olumba, with this investigation, what do you hope to come from this? I mean, you mentioned that the Wayne County prosecutor does have on her desk a request. You have the Inspector General that for the City of Detroit, a newly created office that is supposed to rid the city of fraud and corruption once identified and highlight, and also recommend prosecution when necessary, or referring criminal acts and not recommend prosecution, recommend review by police officials when deemed necessary, as well as you have the council itself looking into this. What do you hope to come from your request that's submitted to the Attorney General?
Justice and justice only. And I think that's what we ought to be concerned with. In a more grandiose perspective, I hope that we can begin to restore some hope and some faith in government in Detroit. I think based upon recent happenings in politics, some of the people have totally checked out of this system. Some of the people have totally lost any sort of confidence in the government. And I think when you have individuals like myself and others, the City Council issued a subpoena. I'm sure others will step forward who are saying, this is what we want some truth, we want some honesty. I think the people who are the foundations of democracy will begin to say, well, you know what, there are some folks trying to do the right thing. Let me check back into the system and let me get involved.
Well, with that, the people, you have called on the people to be engaged in a second part of an action that you took, and that is the recall of Mayor Dave Bing. Right. Representative Olumba, next year you have the regular city elections. The City of Detroit recently obtained this mayor through a special election that cost the city money, and some folks say it's continuing to cost city money. Yeah. But at the end of the day, there's a regular election that's already budgeted, that's scheduled for next year. You filed this petition language to have the mayor recalled. Why is it necessary, from your perspective at least, to recall the mayor and call for a special election to have to determine whether or not he should be recalled? That costs money in a city that's financially stressed, according to city officials.
Right, and I think that's a fair question. I would start with the maxim that justice delayed is justice denied. Oftentimes when people went about trying to get justice, people said, just wait, and just wait. And they continue to wait until...
But it hasn't been determined yet that anything criminal has occurred. So right. Justice...
But when we go into the recall petition portion of it, now we're talking about overall performance. And the cost of... Before I went into this, I did all of my research. I'm very well prepared on the issue. And the cost of an election costs somewhere between, on the very, very low end, if you're just holding a basic election, it's about $600,000. On the high end, it's about $1 million, okay? $600,000 to $1 million. Now,
My
That's for
understanding
one.
is between 800 and $1 million.
Okay, 800. I'll give you 800 to $1 million if you know. Now that's the difference of $200,000.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And that's nothing to sneeze over. But when you're talking about holding an election and you're talking about preserving democracy, the people's right to be able to collect signatures and have an election whenever they want. Now, the clerk's office should have budgeted for what are 4 regular elections during the year. We have an election in February, May, August, and December. They should have budgeted for that.
Right, we don't have an election.
But those are election dates that are slated. And so an election, there's a high possibility that an election will happen on those dates. And they're supposed to be budgeted for. But nevertheless, let's do the math. We're talking about 800, let's say on the high end, $1 million for an election. Just last month, within the last 3 months, this mayor sent back $11 million. Over the course of last year, he sent back $40 million. The $11 million is 10 times what it would cost for an election. Over the past year, $40 million. That's 40 times what it would cost for an election. Now, let's talk about it. This mayor and the track that he's going on, and his track record shows that next year, he's due to want to give away Belle Isle. He's due to want to give away Hart Plaza. He's due to also want to give away our lights to DTE. He's got a number of things that are planned, that are giveaways that are going to cost this city much more money, and do irreparable damage to the city.
Representative Olumba, it also includes the Detroit City Council. He's not going to be able to unilaterally give away those things. So you have the Detroit City Council that will now be in play. I mean, they will have to approve all of those issues the same way they had to approve that consent agreement. So
I think that's fair, but as the question that you just asked me earlier, you said, well, with this consent agreement in place, did the mayor really have to go through council to approve this $50,000? You asked that question yourself. I don't know that question is clear. And so what I'm saying is it may not be that the mayor may be able to find creative ways in which he's able to give this stuff away or sign these agreements without bringing it to city council first. And so that being said, they ran a poll that through the city of Detroit that this mayor has an 83% disapproval rating. 83%? That's higher than I've heard for any elected official anywhere since I've been alive.
Speaking of elected
even
officials,
for dog catcher, by the way.
speaking of elected officials, next year we have an election for a new city council be elected from districts, as well as the mayor's office, as well as the city clerk. There's some folks who have thrown their names out there for consideration for the office of mayor. You have Mike Duggan, you have Representative Lisa House, Representative Fred Durhall, and some others who have, and Benny Napoleon. There's some folks who are saying that your name is bandering about out there as far as considering mayor. Are you doing this because you want to run for mayor, or are you considering a bid?
No. I'm doing it because members of my constituency came to me and gave me documents. I mean, I don't know how much clearer I can be. They gave me documents that showed that money was misappropriated. If I don't act on that, then who am I as a representative? Who am I to go around saying, I'm going to stand up for the people and deliver justice when justice is asked for?
Well, on that note, we're out of time, and I want to thank you for coming in and sharing your time with us this morning.
Mr. Kinloch, thank you. God bless.
I know of no safe repository of the ultimate power of society but the people, and if we think them not enlightened enough, the remedy is not to take power from them, but to inform them by education. That's what I hope we do here each week on the Jonathan Kinloch Show, educate you and inform you on all of these issues around here. So until next week, have a great week.